every drama you watch is very culture heavy. There's no drama without the culture. So the
Yeah,
food,
yeah,
the culture, the family angle is all part of every drama. So you learn so much about it
yeah.
through watching K dramas, which I think doesn't happen in any other
Yeah,
content that I've
probably this is
watched.
the kind of content, only kind of content we want to go to Korea. We want to experience those things.
Yeah, like
I
as
want
in
to go to that karaoke night, whatever you they call it. Today's episode is with someone who's amongst the first generation of YouTubers in India, Sherry Shroff. Sherry and I spoke today about a common love for Korean content and why is it resonating amongst so many people in India. Sherry, welcome to Questions I Wanted to Ask. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. So glad we could do this.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we've been planning this for very, very long time. So I'm so glad we could do this today. How are you? How are you feeling now?
I'm good. I'm back to normal now, thankfully. But yeah, I feel like July is the month where I get sick every year. So I was kind of predicting what I was just like, what disease is going to be this year.
Oh,
For the last 4 years, I've had something in July. So I was like, okay, it's malaria. Got it done. We're okay now. So all good.
You're up and running now. Back to creating
back
content.
to normal. Yeah, back to creating content. Back to dog walks. Back to everything.
But tell me, how's been this entire did you actually take a break from creating content during when you were not well, or you were just
so when I had malaria, I did I think for a week or so, but otherwise not much. I mean, I'm kind of used to I don't pre-shoot content, so most of my content is shot and goes up in a day or two at best. So whenever I get sick or something randomly happens, then there's nothing because I've obviously not pre-shot that much. And at best have like a video or a couple of videos lined up. But yeah, I mean, I'm cool to take breaks when I don't feel up to it, or I feel like my audience gets that. And whenever I'm unable to post, I'm honest with people saying, guys, I need a break, or I'm doing this, or this is what's happening, and everyone seems to be very understanding about it. So.
Interesting. So this is like also one of your ways through which you cut off from the world of internet and kind of go into your own world when you take these breaks?
I mean, it's kind of off from the internet. I feel media. I'm watching something streaming online. So you're never really offline per se. Like there's always like something happening. But yeah, I do now tend to take longer breaks. Like when I do a break, I'm just like, okay, let's not obsess over like social media or, also I think over the last few years, stopped like going into like my phone constantly. Like when you post a piece of content to keep checking or how many views, how many likes, initially you do that. Then I stop. And then I don't look at it for a few hours or, till the next day because I'm like, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And then kind of engage with the comments later or whenever at one point. But I'm not like obsessive about anything I put out. I put it out and I'm like, okay, it's out there. It's done.
Was it like a trained was it like a trained exercise for you to not go back to that post once you put it in?
I mean, it was a realization at some point because I think everybody goes through it, creator. Otherwise, you post a picture and you tend to see how many likes are there. Let me refresh. And after a point, I started realizing that, people are matching their self-worth to the number of likes or the number of followers or the number of, engagements we get on a content piece, which is crazy because we used to start thinking, like, for example, if I posted a video, or if I posted a selfie of my face and it got like 100 likes versus I posted a picture of a bag and it got 200 likes, I started valuing this thing. Oh, this didn't do really well. And I'm like, that's my face I'm talking about there. And, valuing that versus just an algo, people seeing it at a particular time, etc., etc. And I was like, that's so unhealthy that, we're all doing that. And I kind of stopped doing that. It's hard, yes. And obviously there are times you go back to it and you have to remind yourself and be like, no, it's just fine. It's fine. Some content pieces will do well, some won't for whatever reason. And you have to stop like kind of valuing yourself as a creator, as an individual basis, what you get on social media or otherwise.
It's interesting because someone like you, who's literally started it all, right? You're like one of the first creators that we saw was creating content around beauty and fashion, and everything
Right.
else that you enjoyed, has now kind of taken this as a more steady process, and you still don't have like a large team. You do it all on your own, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I have
Pretty
someone who
much.
helps me edit, but otherwise, yeah, pretty much on my own. And I
Yeah.
have someone that manages my brand collabs, but not on a day-to-day basis. Like my day-to-day shooting and stuff is all me.
Is still you, right? You don't have a team who comes and setups and gives you ideas and all of that stuff. This is all
Right.
you, which is interesting because in that rut of all everybody trying to create lots of content, what we forget is that the essence goes away when when
Right.
you as a creator move away. And in fact, that's when I thought of you and I really wanted you to come on the podcast, I was like, I have two things on my mind. I want to talk about why you're not in that hurry of creating content, right? And
Right.
why it's very important for you to keep going back to who you are. And secondly, you have suddenly taken this new passion or whatever, I don't know whether you call it hobby, or there's this fun thing that you have taken upon yourself which is called K-drama, and you're
Yeah.
talking about it. And I was like, these are two different topics, but I've really got to this thing. And when we spoke, I realized that you've already spoken so much about content. So for my viewers and for people who are hearing this, I really want to divert to the Korean drama mystery
Right.
and what is all this about. So okay, when did you start watching Korean dramas?
So it was during the pandemic last year, I think around May, June, so about a year ago. And I remember, we were all in the first lockdown phase where we watched a lot of content, right? Because initially everybody was like, okay, this is going to last 10 days or like 2 weeks or whatever. And so I think in like March, April, I went like crazy watching a lot of content online. And then I was kind of out of content in May, June. Like nothing exciting was on like, streaming platforms for me because I had watched so much content. And one of my closest friends, for like, I think a month or two before this, she was watching Crash Landing on You and she kept talking about it and saying, I'm watching this Korean show and it's amazing. And I can't wake up in the morning because I'm up till 2. And we're like, what's this obsession with this show? And like, whatever. And we used to make fun of her and mock her, like, because it's 3 of us in a group and me and like my other friend used to be like, oh God, now she's going to watch a Korean drama. She won't hang out with us on a Zoom call and stuff like that. And we made so much fun of her. And then at this point when I had nothing to watch, I was like, chalo, this thing was popping up on my Netflix. And I was like, oh, why don't I give this show a shot, since she said it's so amazing and whatever, let's see.
Yeah.
And I started watching it, and then there's just been
What
no
was the
turning
first show?
back.
Which was the first
Crash
show?
Landing on
Crash
You.
Landing. Okay.
And I think well into like, I think the second or third episode is when I was like, oh my God, I called my friend. I was like, I'm really sorry I made fun of you, but this is like gold. Like, how did I not do this earlier? And why did I not do this earlier? And she was like, see, I told you. And I was like, yeah, it's like a whole new world. And since then, I think there's not been a break from K-drama. Like I have gone from drama to drama to drama to drama to drama. There's just been no escape. And then I think around September last year, I started Sherry's K-drama Club, which is a close Facebook group with K-drama enthusiasts talking about dramas and all things Korean.
I'm part of it.
And it's just my little world of, it's crazy because I've traveled the world luckily with my job and even otherwise, and I've just never felt the kind of connection to a culture and country that I have to like with Korea K-drama.
Yeah.
And it's insane. I think I did a panel even with the Hindu where they were discussing the Hallyu wave and the pandemic, and we had people from different walks of life discussing different areas, and I was discussing K-drama. And it was amazing to hear everybody, like whether you're a chef and you're obsessed with Korean food, whether you're someone like me that's obsessed with K-drama, or someone else that's obsessed with with K-beauty. The passion is so real, and it's become such a cultural obsession, not just product based, or like I've watched other shows, I've watched Spanish shows, I've watched but it's not like I've gone so deep into the culture that I'm like, okay, or the language. Here, it's just like the whole world, you get so absorbed into it, and then there's just no escape. Like, I mean, it's like now I barely watch English content. Like I think over the last year I've watched, I don't know how many K dramas, I've lost count, but like now I watch like 3-4 dramas at one time. Like that's the space I'm in. So yeah, I mean that's how it started and that's how it's going.
But tell me something, because you were talking about the cultural similarities, right? I interestingly, of course, there's similarities, and in those similarities, I also found something very interesting, which in my head, otherwise it was not there. Was the social stigmas, right? The kind of social stigmas our society or Indian society has, they experience pretty much the same thing. Like the first show that I watched was Something in the Rain. And it was about this girl who's a slightly older, in her 35s, in that bracket, and that pressure of getting married. And then she falls in love with a younger guy. It's the same social stigmas.
And her mother.
And the mother.
I don't think I will ever forget that character. Like, like I was so angry, like watching her. I was like, oh my God, stop beating your daughter. Like in my head, I was like, it's just so crazy where you're like, but yeah, so as you said, there are so many similarities. And I think that is part of the obsession. Because I feel like we connect to it. Like there's such a, like, we're so different yet so similar at some level where you realize, like, even they say, Amma and Appa, which of course, like even we say Amma and Appa here, and
with so much of drama.
Similar. The removing of the shoes and wearing house chappals, which is again something I do at home. So, and I've always done that. So I was like, oh my God, it's not just me. Like they do it too. Or even like just in general, the whole outlook, as you said, living with your parents in your 30s, which is in the rest of the world, you don't see it as such a common feature, right? Like where here it's very normal. So that whole family life, the whole parental involvement in a child's life, even when they're an adult, and the say they have, and all of those things, I think added to the whole attraction for Indians, because our cultures are very similar. Even though they're different. There's that similarity for sure. And I think for me, even the food, like I just love the food. Like I feel like, this, and what I love is every drama you watch is very culture heavy. There's no drama without the culture. So the food, the culture, the family angle is all part of every drama. So you learn so much about it through watching K-dramas, which I think doesn't happen in any other, content.
Probably this is the only kind of content we want to go to Korea. We want to experience those things.
Like
I want to go to that karaoke night, whatever they call it.
I want to live in a tiny little apartment with that little keypad lock.
But
like everything seems to look like so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I would say all the aspects of our societal construct, right, are similar to theirs, including the stigmas, except the part that the aesthetics is very different in our content versus they are really, really beautiful, most of them. Right? Tell me, because we are talking about stigmas and all, why do you think, they are a much developed country as compared to us. Why do you think they still have similar stigmas as us?
I think it's also just what's culturally appropriate, right? Like, so I think when you look at a culture and you say this is part of our culture, a lot of things are accepted as because it's part of the culture and not about modernization or development as a nation or how we are. So, I mean, even today, I think even in India where we are, so many of us are talking about, women's issues and which we weren't doing 10 years ago. I think it's similar there, where you see like a lot of K-dramas now are focusing on actual real life issues where they're trying to highlight them. There are dramas with messaging as well to kind of showcase that, okay, this is okay, or this is the right way to do things. And I think it's all, part of the process of growth. But I think what we see is obviously a very limited world, right? Like, I mean, we assume it's like anyone watching Bollywood movies and thinking that's how every Indian lives. I mean, that's obviously the wrong way to look at it. I mean, this is a bit of a fantasy world, because I've been to Seoul twice, and without K-drama, I never saw most of these things in the sense of, like it wasn't so, like, it was just like, it was a lovely city and I had a great time. But I mean, like the K-drama world is obviously a bit of fantasy and a bit of what people want to see as well.
The
right?
nicer parts of it.
Nicer, and also even I think everything is either extreme. So it's not like like when you go to Seoul, it is a regular modern city like any other modern city, and you will not feel like, oh, I never noticed this people taking off their shoes or any of these things, obviously, because I never went to anyone's house. But I think it's just I think what we're seeing in today's world may not be what we are looking at in K-dramas a lot of times. And I've watched a lot of these videos online of actual Koreans reacting to K-dramas, or like when I started getting into the K-drama world, I was like, oh, are all Korean men like this? Because this is unreal. Like, I mean, where are like who's making these videos or these shows? Because if they are a species like this, then like this should be marketed.
Do you know the actual statistics? I read somewhere that 90% of the writers on Korean drama are women.
Everything, yeah, exactly. That is exactly why. So that's what I mean. That it's all a bit of fantasy at some level. And when you see real people reacting, or even when you see, like if you Google, Koreans reacting to K-dramas, or what Korean men think of K-dramas, they all say, no, we don't behave like this. It's not real. So, I mean, I think it's obviously that build up, that fantasy that everybody wants. And it's such a beautiful world that you don't want a reality. You're like happy to live in that little bubble of yours where everything is perfect and, the oppa is going to save the day. And you're like, just like, oh, there's no one like this person, which is how you feel after every drama, right? Like I initially thought I was obsessed with only Hyun Bin. And now, I mean, I'm obsessed with like 20 like lead Korean actors, because every time I watch a drama, I'm like, oh my God, he is so good. Oh my God, he is so good. And that's because that's how their characters are framed for us to like fall in love with them. So I think, there's obviously a formula, and the formula works really well with women across the board, not just Korean women. So I think it's important to note that it is a bit of fantasy, obviously, when you're watching it and when you're absorbed in it. It's a beautiful world and a nice escape to kind of reality. But it's all like, it's important to note that it's just a show at the end of the day.
But what's interesting is that even the Korean dramas which were actually running on television didn't have as much intimacy. Like they would take like an entire season to get to that one kiss, or whatever. However,
so hand holding was like episode 4, 5. Kiss was like episode 8, 9.
Yeah, and then wahan tak, and then the same thing. Wo music aa jata hai. You start showing the moon and the sun, and that kind of a thing. But what's interesting is Netflix has taken it like to the next level, right? Because it's OTT now, so you can show to whatever extent the intimacy or whatever. I mean, and that's the reason I think we are constantly getting glued to kind of that content also, because the intimacy level in those shows is slightly more higher, or I would say adult, or whatever the right term is.
No, but I think it's actually the opposite. I think like the non sexual angle is what people loved about it, because I think that excitement and innocence of those shows was so different, right? The build-up is so strong. Like I remember in Crash Landing on You, like when that first kiss happens, it was like, I was like, oh my God. Finally. Like it was like almost like, like we've all waited for this, like we're all rooting for this. So I think that build-up, which happens in so many shows, gets it more exciting for viewers to be like, okay, as opposed to them like Nevertheless, which is the new show like right now, which is completely like the opposite of all these shows where you're watching it and you're like, oh my God, like I was almost shocked, being like, oh my God, this is the K-drama I'm watching.
Because it's, I think it's only Netflix. That's why the intimacy level is much,
and it's much quicker, right? Like even like they even though they may trick you with a dream sequence and stuff, but it's really like all really happens really quickly, and you're like, oh my God, wow, I wasn't prepared for this. So I think, and we actually had a discussion about this in the group as well, because I asked people saying, how do you feel about this? Because for me, I was like, initially I was like, oh my God, wow. And then I was like, oh, but I kind of like this model as well. Like, I mean, I'm not like averse to this saying, oh, I only love the innocent hand holding or whatever. But I feel like a lot of people did love that build up, the slow build up, and that, that tension of, oh, when is this person going to actually hold someone's hand or kiss, or that innocence, that first love kind of, feeling, even though they're in their 30s, which, I mean, you don't normally see. Like, you see that in like high school dramas and stuff like that in other genres or English content, but you never see it like in like with 30-year-old people being like, oh my God, like he touched my hand. Like, that's never like, a thing that you're like, oh wow. In English content especially, right? You're just like, okay, this is so crazy. So I think that balance also sometimes makes people enjoy it because it's a break from what you regularly see. So I think it'll be interesting to see now how things pan out, because the newer shows are obviously more progressive and forward and current, while the older shows are obviously still not. But there's just so much to watch, like it's crazy. Like, even forget the newer shows. There's so many shows that we've missed out on when you start watching now. That you're like, I'm watching like shows from like the early 2000s also right now. So it's like, and it's dated, but it's still so beautiful that you don't want to not watch it.
Actually, one of the interesting things which I find about them is they're still very urban. I mean, if you're not going in that mytho and the fantasy zone, right? They're still very urban. So they kind of make you relatable. The issues are relatable. Yeah. The characters are put in situations which are very relatable. Maybe early 2000, what you're watching is something that's happening to us now in India.
Yeah. I mean, I think also because of the similarities, you don't see such a stark difference in culture, because like obviously when you compare American content to Indian content, there's a big difference in the level of, I mean, now of course not, because with OTT platforms, even Indian content is pretty progressive. But I mean, in the sense of as culturally forward or not, when you watch the shows, we seem like we're the same but different. Like there's just that fine line. So I think that it's not as stark as it used to be, right? Like when you look at content, like it feels like a much smaller world.
But I do feel that, somewhere they are much ahead of us, because because what their current society is. So for example, they have a lot of shows which are with the younger high school, targeting the high school audience and all of that. So they have stories which are set up with gaming teams and gamers and, esports teams and all. And we are we're still a little far away from those, settings or those setups, I feel. So that way they're a little, kind of far away. But tell me something which is very interesting. So earlier you mentioned that the entire Korean thing has become like a culture for you, right? Because you're getting influenced with so many aspects of their culture.
Right.
So you started with the shows first, and then everything else followed for you, whether it was the food or anything else, like fashion, for example?
I mean, I think food is always, and I love food, and when I travel, food is always a big thing for me to try local food. So obviously when I was in Seoul, I tried a lot of the local food and I loved it. But it wasn't something I had thought I'd order takeout, like Korean takeout in Bombay, right? Like, I mean, that was not something I was doing before. But then I think this whole year, you've had so many Korean restaurants, cloud kitchens, all
it's
pop up.
Available now.
So or even ramyun, which it started with ordering from Amazon. I remember last May, June when I ordered, it was on only on Amazon. And now your gully ka shops have it. Like it's not
have it exactly. Yeah, so and at least 6-7 varieties.
So it's the trickle down effect that has happened because there's a demand for it, right? Like, which is what I mean and it's not just K-drama. So you're looking at, I think, Korean content across the board has really, really peaked in the last 1 year. So whether it's K-drama, it's Korean movies. Korean movies are winning Oscars for the last 2 years. It's crazy. How there's so much talk about Korean movies, and that gets you to watch more Korean movies because you obviously realize that, these are, great. Let's see what else is out there. K-pop is getting bigger and bigger.
Are you following K-pop? Do you follow something?
So I just follow a few, bands here and there, but honestly, or groups. I'm not really like someone who's really, really into K-pop as much, but I do love the soundtracks on K-dramas. So I do obviously download those, and I feel like it sticks with you because they kind of use like, the same track through the drama, and then when you're like you're humming it by the end of the drama, and you're like, okay, I want this song. So I do love that aspect of it. So I think that has all obviously channeled this, this progress to like happen so quickly. Whereas last year we were, as I said, like, you thought of one single Korean product, and now today you're getting like 20, like right here at your doorstep.
Yeah.
So I think all these factors have contributed to this, and it's become really popular across the board. So whether it's food, whether it's, everybody like the fashion,
makeup,
everybody's like, makeup, K-beauty. So I think, and also dramas are very ad heavy, right? Like, so they all have plugs in drama. So you see a lot of product integrations, which you end up wanting to buy. Like, in fact, this was one of my conversations and posts from yesterday on the group, saying that I noticed one of the lead characters was supposed to be a poor student. She's got like all the 3 Dyson hair tools, which I mean, was a bit unrealistic if you know Dyson and you know the brand.
It's amongst the...
I was like, wow, she's doing well for a poor student who's like, just putting one flick with one and then the other one comes out. And then we were discussing, I was like, don't you feel like sometimes there's so many plugs that are so obvious in K-dramas and everyone's listed like obvious ones. And they're like, this. So you see a lot of products, right, that you want to buy. So ramyun, for one, is something you see a lot in K-dramas, and it makes you want to eat it. Yeah. Which was how my obsession started. And I also learned how to make ramyun the Korean way through K-drama. So I never had to look at a recipe. It was literally like you see them, they crack the egg, they put sausages in, they do like, and I was like, kimchi and ramen is good together. Let me buy kimchi also. So it's like, you're looking at this, it's like, which I've never done, right? Like I've never got a recipe off a show.
It looks beautiful. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing with food, especially. So, it looks beautiful. The hot pots.
Or the barbecue, like I also had a Korean barbecue this year, which I wouldn't have thought I would be having here. So I think it's all about, because you see so much of it that you become like more curious and you're like, I want to try this. I want to get this. And then you start liking it. And it becomes a part of, of your life, which may be a totally different culture, but then becomes like similar to what you feel or see, So I think it's only because we've become so obsessive and familiar currently that everyone is like, on this like craze to be like, okay, I want to try this, I want to do this, I want to do that. And it really feels amazing to be in that space, because I don't think we've ever been that way with any other, culture or country. Like even I think in general, I don't think anyone has taken such a keen interest in the cultural angle to, any other.
And so many aspects of that culture. Yeah, it's not just food or fashion and all of that. It's also like, the way they live their life and stuff like that.
So I think everything has kind of contributed to the success of, the Hallyu wave in the country and across the globe. But it's also, I think, just it's piqued your interest. Like even if you watch one K-drama, anyone watches one K-drama, guaranteed they will want 5 things from that K-drama. Want to try Korean food, or want to get a packet of ramyun, or want to,
the face masks.
Yeah, the face mask. So, things like that, which you feel like, okay, this is interesting. So I think it depends on the kind of drama you watch, obviously, but every drama I feel sucks you in somewhere, and you get into something.
Yeah. But tell me, Shari, you've been reviewing fashion beauty products since you started putting up content or integrated them in your content, right? And Korean beauty stuff is not something that just come. I mean, we realize this now, but it's been there.
Yeah.
It's been there.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah, it's for a while. I just feel that in the last 2 years, because of, maybe accessibility also, those beauty products have came. What are the kind of products that people are now wanting to use, and you get, being asked about these Korean? I mean, I know face mask is one.
I think, I've seen that rise of K-beauty for sure, being in the beauty industry. Also, I remember I've been to Seoul twice, I think 2 years ago, and then the year before that. So 3 years ago when I went the first time, there's this whole street called Myeongdong, which is like a whole beauty market, which is just like K-beauty, like, hundreds of stores, and each store has like masks for everything, like your face, your eyes, your fingers, your hands, your feet, your butt. There's a mask for everything. And, all the other creams or serums or everything. And the first time we went there, we obviously just had a couple of hours because we had to catch our flight the same day. And I was there for a sporting event, not for beauty. So this was just like part of like, oh, we have to at least see one thing. So let's go there, because we're literally there for like a day and a half. So I said, let's just go to the street and at least buy all the K-beauty products. And I remember, because I knew I had half a day, I was like, let me do my research to see what I should buy and all, prior to that, which I wouldn't have done if I was going on a normal trip for 3-4 days. But I was like, thank God I've done this research, because when I went there, it was so overwhelming, but there was so much at that point. And we didn't get those products in India like we do today, right? Like sheet masks and all was not so like big, like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And they're like packs of like 20. And you're like, okay, buy for this one. But I came back with so many sheet masks that, because I was like, oh my God, like it was like literally everybody's like, how many have you bought? I was like, I just bought everybody sheet masks, because there was just no time for anything else. And that time I remember people were still very intrigued when I did a beauty haul with all this stuff, saying this is what I had bought. And this is stuff that I researched to buy, because I didn't have a lot of time and I knew I wanted to just get stuff that I needed. And versus 2 years ago when I went, of course, a lot of the products were already available here. There was that difference, there was a lot more. And today now, I mean, I think you have pretty much, I think very few K-beauty brands that are not available in India still. I think everything is available either on boutique stores that do Korean products or on your big, e-commerce platforms. So I think it's definitely become a very normal part of the whole beauty space to have K-beauty. And I think there's some things that they just do so well, like sheet masks and,
what
serums
is it
and
that
things
is
like that.
different? Like, why is why are the beauty products so different from, say, what we are making here in India, or maybe even the French products? What is it?
I think
that's
it used to be, if I'm not wrong, it was one of the beauty capitals of the world, and they were always known for their skincare regimes. And that is how K-beauty kind of became popular, because everybody said they have Korean glass-like skin and beautiful skin, and what is their routine. And then that kind of took off into obviously brands and products, which then became internationally marketable. And everybody then said, okay, let me try this. See, also, I think what I find with K-beauty products is the ease of using them. I've never felt that there's something that is, so complicated to use, which as someone I'm very like, okay, I use 2 things and I put them and I'm done. I don't like to do like a lot of stuff. Even though the Koreans layer and they have a lot of products, but I feel like everything is very easy, right? Like you use a sheet mask, you use that sheet mask, anyone can use it. You don't need a guide to use it, or it's not that hard. Or everything else that they have in terms of products is very like, okay, this is the serum, this is this. And of course, if you know what your skin is like, there are great products, obviously, across the board here or there, everywhere. I mean, that's obvious. But I think with them, in terms of the kind of products and the scale that they've produced them at, obviously they've become one of the beauty capitals of the world, because it's just, there's so much. Like, honestly, as I said, if you walk down that street, it's pretty much like it's nicknamed, I think, the beauty street of Korea. There is so much. Like, you could spend 4 days and, you would still not finish it. Like, it's
you'll feel poor.
You'll feel very poor. And there's just so much, because also, what serum do you want? Like, how do you know which brand to buy, right? Like, unless you've done your research, unless you're aware about K-beauty products and stuff like that, or brands. Like for me, I remember I discovered Cosrx on the first trip that I went, when I bought something from Cosrx and never knew about it. And like, when I came back and I obviously loved the product, I went online to see, and I was like, oh, this is a big brand, whatever. But we didn't get it in India at that point. And then now 2 years down the line, we do get it here. So it's interesting to see that, shift also, which is happening across the board, where I think everything, like Korean snacks are available here. Yeah. I mean, now that's reached like, banana milk in the carton that you see in the K-drama, you can get here. So the trickle down effect for me is what I am amazed by, because I've literally seen that from 3 years ago to today. that the sharp shift in how accessible things have become is amazing. Like, I mean, I can't, like, I'm absolutely baffled at how we have so much stuff that's available here now.
Yeah, it's interesting. For me, one of the things of the influence of this has been the entire Korean entertainment industry, because of the content and because of K-pop. So I discovered K-pop because of Korean content, right? And then I, obviously being the business person and being the agent that I am, I started reading more about how these young kids are becoming like such global brands, right? And I figured that this is like they literally start training and
like
preparing
as teenagers.
Like 11 and 12, they are put into those schools to become, what we call today Pink or, any of these groups that are this thing. So for me, I think it's a big influence to how we are also going to be doing business in the future and coming, in the coming few years.
Right. So I think obviously there's also a lot of people say there's this really dark side to the whole, the whole entertainment industry in general, in terms of, as you said, like the K-pop groups start training as young as like 9, 10 sometimes. Whereas even with with the dramas, with the actors, they have really watertight like contracts. Or if you see even their personal lives, they're never allowed to really talk about their personal lives, and it's a very stark difference to the other celebrities that you will see across the globe. They're very private with their personal lives because their fans don't appreciate it, and their agents will clamp down on them posting.
They're very emotional.
So I think there is obviously a pro and a con to everything, obviously, and I think we don't see that side because we choose not to, which is why I remember even when I watched, I think, the Blackpink documentary on Netflix, which is when I was introduced to them. I didn't really know of their music before. I'd only heard of BTS. And I said, oh, this looks interesting. And then I was amazed to see that, wow, someone has gone from Australia to Korea, moved there, at such a young age, and like trained themselves to get to where they are and things like that, which I was like, for us,
without knowing that you'll actually get there or
you
not.
Make it. And of course, the ones who make it are a really small percentage, similar to what we see in Bollywood here, right? Like you see thousands of people have dreams to become Bollywood stars, but a very small group actually make it. But the difference is, I think we don't have the kind of training and the kind of time that these guys give to it, which is what I think a lot of people are saying is it's so rigorous that you dedicate like maybe 10 years of your life and then you may not make it. But I think that also the investment, but I think that also contributes to their success, which is why they're all such amazing singers, dancers, like even with, the actors in K-drama, you see they are, they're great with action, they're great with romance, they're great with all kinds of like horse riding, stunts, because they've obviously trained in all this to get to that point where in any drama when it's required, so they have to put in the time and effort to hone their skills to play those characters. So it is actually that is actually part of the whole acting process as well. And with K-pop as well, it's not just about singing; it's about performing. It's about how you dress. It's about the whole like package.
How you carry,
So I think obviously that training is what gets them to that level, right? Like, I mean, you see BTS is the biggest followed group in the world.
Records.
That nobody has. And that's because they're all amazing, right? And you listen to them, you see them dance, and I'm like, wow, there's not a flaw you can like now when they were walking for the LV show, I was like, wow, they look amazing even as models. Like, there was not like a minute where I was like, oh my God, like these people are not models, they are like singers or, performers. They look amazing. So I think that the training that they do, I think really takes them to the next level of being such amazing performers that they are across the board, whether it's acting, singing, whatever they do, they put their heart and soul into it. So when you really see them, you can't compare it to other people because they're at another level.
I feel it's all part of the package, because whenever you see a group, what intrigues me more is I have never heard or read I mean, of course, online, any news that, okay, there's an issue in the personal chemistry, there's an issue between two people in the group. Never. Like, you'll never hear this from a BTS or from Pink or any of these newer groups that they've launched and all of that, because their information is so controlled. I don't know how do they manage to do that, but hats off.
Also, I think years of being together, right? Like, I mean, I think because they live together, as they said, right? Like, I think even in the Blackpink documentary, they talk about how they live together and they are made to live as a group so that they don't fight and so that they get along and they know each other and they find their rhythm together. Which I think is so important because you don't see that, right? Like, otherwise you feel like, oh yeah, I just met this person and I'm putting in a group with them. But they, and from watching their documentary, I realized that they do a different mix, right? They said they try different people with different people in the school constantly until they kind of find the right match. And then that group is launched as a group. And I was like, wow, that is just heartbreaking for the ones that don't make it. But for the ones that have made it, they've obviously really matched them to the last T to see why this group of 4, 5, 7, whatever is the right group, together. So I think that obviously makes a difference. And as you said, it's very controlled. I mean, so you will not see even like most of the Korean actors are not on social media. Most of them, if they are, their management manages their social media. It's very controlled. Yeah. It's not like everyday posting. Or their personal lives are not really out there. You will not see people talking about them dating. They will only come out when they're like getting married or it's a serious situation. So I think those kind of things, it's a very different world in that aspect because I think we're used to a more, uncontrolled press and more just like,
they're used to more media trials
and rumors. So I think that difference definitely is there. But
that also makes them very, very professional and be able to do this at such a scale.
Yeah, but also I think for us, as people not living in the country, you don't really hear of it as much, right? Unless you deep dive online, right? So now, if you're, for example, you're a K-pop fan, you're listening to their music, you're loving their music, you're not really interested in what the tea is. Or if you're, someone who loves K-dramas and you're watching a lot of K-dramas, you're not really deep diving into like online gossip about people or whatever. Unless you like obsessed with that one, character or actor and you're like, okay, let me see what their life is about and whatever. But that's it. You'll do that one round of Googling and then you move on to the next drama. But I guess when you're living in the country, obviously it's more current because it's part of your news. It's like how we see our actors here in the news or our singers here in the news. So I think that aspect doesn't really affect a lot of the global fans because they don't anyways, see a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, it is more controlled for sure. It's very, you can tell.
Going back to the K-drama, I think one question that intrigues me, and I've always thought about it, that why do I like this more, is something that a lot of people say that because most of the characters are rich, they are alpha men. And women are actually shown in two light. Either they're shown to be very, very strong characters and men are very reciprocative to them, and they accommodate or whatever, they give them equal respect, or it's the other way around where the woman is shown to be like the not so strong one and the man really kind of makes her strong or whatever. Do you think that's the reason we like a lot of these dramas? And we go back to being for me so regressive. I mean, if I have to put it that way.
Right. No, so I do see a lot of the regressive sides of it. But I feel like you're far more forgiving because it just looks aesthetically pleasing. I mean, when you're watching it, you're not like, oh my God, like, but like I've said this to myself many times when I'm watching this thing. If this was an Indian show, I would be like, this is so cringe in my head. But I'm here, I'm like, ha, 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 because it's like Korean. Or even with the comedy, for example, sometimes, like a lot of the comedy in like your regular, shows is a little over the top, which if you saw, which we watch here, we'd be rolling our eyes, but there we are like happily giggling away because I'm like, oh, it's K-drama, it's funny. So I think there is a bias, obviously, which I've noticed in myself also, and I've said that to myself many times, saying, oh, like you're letting this go because it's K-drama. Also, I think the reason I love the actors is because they have two sides. Like in any K drama, you see the male lead can also be very vulnerable as well as really like alpha, which I love. Like I love that they show both sides, and they're crying and they're as emotional as the women, which is what I love. Because you don't see that often, like you don't see that this guy is so vulnerable when it comes to love, but he's also like so like, oh my god, I'll fight the world and I'll be like, I'm like part of the army and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, he'll still be okay to be like crying and like hugging this girl and being like, oh my god, when will I see you next? Which I love that side of
the male
portrayal, which is really, really, to me, stands out as compared to anything else we watch. The reason I think I wouldn't, that's what attracts me to K-drama mainly, those kind of plots in the love story. Everything else, honestly, I feel for me personally is easy to ignore or let go of, because it's not at the end of the day my culture or not my space, right? Like I feel like, okay, yeah, I'm watching something else. So as we say, when you look at things that are regressive, it's easy to distance yourself selectively because you know that at the end of the day, that is not where you are. So I think it's very selective, and there's a bit of a bias there when you're watching as well, is what I've realized. That sometimes I'm like, okay, this is really unrealistic, but I'll let it go because it's a K-drama. Whereas if it were, something else, I'd be like, oh, this is so unrealistic. Like, this is not going to happen, So I think it is in that space of once you're in, you realize, as I said, when you realize there's part fantasy, part whatever reality, you take what you like and what you don't like, you just ignore because you're just like, okay, I don't want to ruin this perfect little world of mine because it is perfect and that's not the reality. So let me just live in it.
On that note, since you said it perfect, so, like I was telling you, I always found it intriguing that, why do I like it so much? Yes, I like because there's a lot of romance. And I think in that era of so much of dark content doing so well across the world, right? I go back to watching romance because I feel it's, la-di-da and nice and all of that. And Korean drama kind of gave you that. I started reading a lot of why people are enjoying, right? So I actually read a very, I'm just going to read out a small Reddit, which I read somewhere. Somebody wrote, this is about a show called, My Mister. This person writes, my mister is like a comforting hug when life feels dull, painful, and hopeless. It's a masterpiece. I've just finished the drama today. And can I just say, this drama has given me so much of love and comfort through this tough time. I didn't even feel depressing. It didn't even feel depressing to watch, to be honest. It felt like I'm watching people go through the harsh waves of life, just like I am. It felt so human. It made me feel okay.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, then. Like, I found this particular thing very, very sweet, and probably the gist of why so many people are watching Korean dramas.
Right. Plus, I do feel like definitely there's a connection. Like, I mean, I feel even on the group when we talk of a drama where, I feel like sometimes I feel a certain way. And I put my opinion out there, and then everybody's like, oh my God, I felt exactly this. And I'm like, oh, I'm not alone. Everybody felt that. So I do feel like there's a connection somewhere with that Korean dramas have with people. And it's across the board, across all ages. It's really weird. Like my mom got into K-drama because I kept talking about it. I never told her to watch a single K-drama, but then she started watching on her own. Yeah. And even now she keeps watching on her own and I'm watching on my own. Like there's no connection. I've never ever said watch this or watch that or whatever. And she likes different kinds of shows. I like different kinds of shows. Yeah. But like she's happy in her own world watching it. I'm happy in my world watching it. So there's a connect for everybody. And it's interesting where we say romance, but there's so many amazing thrillers. There's so many, there's so many men on the group, right? Which I didn't think there were any men watching K-dramas. I was like, okay, who's going to watch this initially? Because I obviously only watched romance. But then I realized there's so many amazing period dramas. There's so many amazing thrillers, so many action dramas. And I think it's just the way they are made, the way they are packaged, everything. That human connection is very strong, as this person said. You feel like you're with those people or you're rooting for them. Like, you're not like, oh my God, like, you're not like, oh God, I don't want this couple to be together. I want the guy. You're actually rooting for them. Whereas like, you're not like jealous for them. You're like, oh my God, come on, hold hands, come on, hold hands, come on, hold hands. Like, it's like that build up. So I feel like that connection of you start like, seeing those characters as that familiar feeling that you get when you watch a K-drama is very different to any other content. So I think when you start a drama, the first 2-3 episodes are really important because those are the ones that kind of suck you in. Yeah. And then you're so invested. Like, I know whenever I start a new drama, like the first episode, I'm very distant and very like, okay, let's see what this is about. Who are these people? What's going on? But by episode 3, you're already so invested in their lives that you're like, oh my God, like, like what's happening? I'm on first name basis with these people now and I want to know every detail of their life. So that's a really interesting, I think, quality that they have. And obviously it's the filmmaking that's so good that sucks you into that deep level of connection where you're like, okay, I want to know more about this character, this person. And they do everything so well. So like, even when the mystery around the character is so amazing that you're like constantly thinking, about their life or what's going on or, like, so I think in general, whatever genre of drama you watch, there's that connection, which is really, really important, which I think most people have seen.
I think, to kind of sum it all, K-dramas are doing what I think 25 years back, Dilwale DDLJ did to an entire generation, and Kuch Hota Hai and DDLJ, like these 2-3 movies. I think they are kind of bringing the same effect to us, and we're kind of waiting for more of that content. And I hope we kind of.
And even with those movies, honestly, we never dug so deep into the
because
characters
of the cultures. No, they are own cultures.
Even the characters. I mean, like in K-drama, you get so invested in a particular character. Their traits, their personality, the way they talk, the things they say, their catchphrases, which I feel, it just goes much deeper. Like that's why I feel that's why people feel so connected, because it's a notch higher than everything else. Where you're
because
so invested.
There's so much of writing involved. I mean, with films, it's
also
whatever.
It's so long, right? Like 21 episodes on an average. Each episode is about an hour. I mean, that's a lot in terms of like, like imagine if you're looking, like each episode is like watching a movie. I mean, in general, some of them are even over an hour. And so it just feels like, obviously that happens, even if you watch one episode a day, it's taken you 20 days. So you're so invested. It's like watching 20 movies. So that connection is so deep. Whereas with shorter form content, obviously you zone out, you watch something else. Here you just watch this, like 2
because
episodes in the last year. I think there's so many current dramas that are coming out like at one time that you're like, oh my God, okay, let me like, watch this, let me watch this, and then you're trying to also catch up on the last 20 years that you've missed. So it's like, oh my God, okay, when is this going to end?
Amazing. This is so amazing. I have to tell you, this is like the most different episode I have ever shot, and we've done over 25 episodes, because most of the episodes, we meet men and women where we're discussing, what do we learn from them? And I genuinely wanted to keep this Korean content because I thought that this is what the world is watching. And nobody better than to talk to you than this. So I hope we are able to give you a lot more on anybody who's watching this. Sherry is like a directory of Korean insights. So anybody who's wanting to.
My 1-year diploma has really gone a long way, clearly.
Korean brands, please come. Here's one woman who has all the insights on what India is watching. Anyways, that was so much fun, Sherry. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure having you. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please make sure you hit the like button, comment what was your favorite part, and also subscribe to the channel. We have lots of fantastic people coming up. This podcast is available on your podcast app by the name Questions I Wanted to Ask. You can also follow me on social media for more updates, short format content. Links will be in the description.